I still remember the sound of my mother's spoon tapping against her crystal glass that evening. It wasn't just the gentle ring that silenced the dinner table. It was the way she cleared her throat afterward, the way her eyes deliberately avoided mine as she prepared to speak. Some sounds stay with you forever. That gentle tap, tap, tap would become the soundtrack to the moment my family revealed who they truly were. "I'd like to make an announcement," my mother, Denise, said, her voice carrying that familiar, authoritative tone she'd perfected over 6 decades of life. The Labor Day weekend family dinner at our Cape May beach house had been going on for nearly 2 hours by then, the traditional lobster shells discarded, the wine flowing freely, the sunset casting long golden shadows across the weathered oak dining table my father had built by hand. I took a sip of my water, watching the faces around me. My older brother, Ryan, always so confident in his tailored shirts and expensive watch. His wife, Kimberly, her highlighted blonde hair cascading over shoulders that never seemed to slouch. My younger brother, Jeremy, perpetually distracted, his mind always elsewhere. His wife, Melissa, quiet and agreeable as always. And then there was Emma, my 16-year-old daughter, the only person at that table who made me feel truly seen. "As you all know," my mother continued, her voice rising slightly as she stood, wine glass aloft, "this house has been in our family for 3 generations now. Your father—" She paused, and I noticed how she didn't look at me when she mentioned him. "Always wanted it to remain a place where Carters would gather for generations to come." I nodded silently. Dad had wanted that. What my mother conveniently omitted was how I was the only one who had fought to keep that dream alive after he passed. "I've been thinking long and hard about the future of this property," she continued, "about who would be the best steward of this legacy." Something in her tone made my stomach tighten. I glanced at Emma, who was absent-mindedly tracing the rim of her glass with her finger. At 16, she'd spent every summer of her life in this house. I'd taught her to swim in the ocean just beyond our porch. She'd learned to ride a bike on the weathered boardwalk that stretched along the shore. This place was as much a part of her as it was of me. "And I've decided," my mother said, her voice brightening as she turned toward my brother and his wife, "that the time has come to honor our family's tradition of preserving legacy." I felt a slight tremor in my hand as I set down my glass. "Kimberly and Ryan have shown such dedication to maintaining our family connections. Their commitment to bringing everyone together, their vision for the future." My mother's voice swelled with pride. "It's exactly what your father would have wanted for this place." The house went silent except for the distant sound of waves crashing against the shore, a sound that had lulled me to sleep since childhood, a sound that had comforted me when I'd spent countless weekends alone here, replacing rotted floorboards, repainting peeling walls, fixing leaky pipes, all while my brothers were too busy with their careers to notice the house slowly falling apart. "So I've decided," my mother continued, raising her glass higher, "that the beach house will be officially signed over to Kimberly. Not Ryan and Kimberly. Just Kimberly." The words hit me like a physical blow. I felt Emma's hand reach for mine under the table. "To Kimberly." Jeremy raised his glass, always quick to follow our mother's lead. "To Kimberly," echoed the others. I lifted my glass mechanically, a smile frozen on my face that didn't reach my eyes. Kimberly beamed, her perfectly whitened teeth gleaming in the candlelight. "I'm so honored," she gushed, reaching across to squeeze my mother's hand. "I promise to keep this house as beautiful as it's always been. As beautiful as it's always been." As though the house had maintained itself through some magical force, not through the thousands of dollars I'd poured into it from my teacher's salary, not through the countless weekends I'd spent with paint in my hair and splinters in my hands, not through the love I'd poured into every corner of this place while everyone else was too busy to notice it falling apart. "A toast to family," Ryan declared, raising his glass higher. "To tradition and legacy." I felt something inside me crack as I sipped my wine. The bitter taste matched the feeling spreading through my chest. But I didn't speak. I didn't cry. I simply nodded and smiled. Because what none of them knew, what my mother had conveniently forgotten, was that after my father died 5 years ago, the official property transfer had never been completed. His will had been ambiguous, left in legal limbo thanks to my mother's endless postponements whenever I tried to address it. What none of them knew was that the original deed, bearing my father's signature and my name, Joanna Elizabeth Carter, as the legal inheritor, was locked away in the safe in my modest home back in Philadelphia. What none of them knew was that while they were toasting to Kimberly's ownership of something that wasn't theirs to give, I was already mentally composing an email to my attorney. So when will the transfer happen? Jeremy asked, refilling his wine glass. Is there paperwork to sign? My mother waved her hand dismissively. I've already spoken with Howard. He's drawing up the papers as we speak. Should be ready by the end of the month. Howard? My mother's attorney, who had been conveniently too busy whenever I'd tried to finalize the property situation years ago. Well, I think it's wonderful, Melissa chimed in, her voice syrupy sweet. Kimberly has such amazing taste. This place could use a woman's touch. I felt my jaw tighten. A woman's touch. As if I hadn't been the one who'd chosen every replacement fixture, every shade of paint, every piece of new furniture over the past 5 years. Maybe we could knock out this wall, Kimberly said, gesturing toward the living room. Open up the space a bit more. And those old kitchen cabinets, they're so dated. The cabinets my father had handcrafted from reclaimed wood. The cabinets I'd carefully restored, sanding each one by hand until my fingers bled. That sounds lovely, dear, my mother said, patting Kimberly's hand. This place could use some modernizing. I felt Emma squeeze my hand again under the table. She knew. She'd been there with me every step of the way, holding the ladder when I painted the ceiling, helping me plant the hydrangeas along the walkway, keeping me company during those long, lonely weekends of restoration that no one else had bothered to join. Mom? She whispered, her voice barely audible. Are you okay? I turned to her, my brave, perceptive daughter, and squeezed her hand back. I'm fine, sweetie, I whispered. Everything will be fine. And in that moment, as the conversation continued around me, as plans were made for a house that wasn't theirs, as my contributions were erased with each excited suggestion for improvement, I made a decision. I would let them have this night. I would let them celebrate. I would smile and nod and play along, because tomorrow would be soon enough to remind them all of what they'd forgotten. That while they'd been building careers and social media followings and lives far away from Cape May, I had been the one building a home. And no announcement over dinner could change what was legally mine. 5 years earlier, I stood in this same dining room, dust motes dancing in the sunbeams that streamed through the windows. The house was eerily quiet then, just 2 weeks after we'd buried my father. His absence felt like a physical thing, a hollowness that echoed through every room. Are you sure you want to do this alone? My friend Margot had asked when I told her I was spending the weekend at the beach house. It's a lot to handle, Joe. But I needed to be there, surrounded by my father's presence in every corner. The workbench in the garage where he'd taught me to sand wood. The porch swing where he'd read me stories as a child. The kitchen where he'd shown me how to crack a lobster shell with just the right amount of pressure. That first weekend, I discovered the extent of what had been neglected. A slow leak had caused part of the kitchen ceiling to collapse. The deck railings wobbled dangerously. The ancient water heater made alarming sounds. The list grew longer with each room I inspected. I called Ryan that Sunday evening. The house needs serious work, I told him. We should talk about splitting the costs. Maybe we could each take a few weekends this summer to— Joe, I'm swamped, he interrupted. The Morgan account is taking all my time, and Kimberly's got us booked for the Hamptons this summer. Can't we just hire someone? On what budget? I asked. Dad didn't leave much cash, and my teaching salary can only stretch so far. Then maybe Mom should just sell it, he suggested casually, as if he were talking about disposing of an old car, not the place where we'd built sandcastles and caught fireflies and learned to swim. Sell it? My voice cracked. Dad loved this house. He wanted it to stay in the family. Be realistic, Joe, Ryan sighed. None of us has time to maintain a second property, especially one that old. I had time. Between school years, during breaks, on weekends. I had time because I made time. Because some things matter more than convenience. Jeremy's response was similarly disheartening. I'm in Chicago now, Joe. I can't just hop on a plane every time a pipe bursts. So I made a decision that spring. If no one else would save our family home, I would do it myself. The first major project was the roof over the guest room. A contractor quoted me $6,800 money I didn't have. So I watched YouTube videos, consulted with the kind elderly man at the hardware store, and spent 2 sweltering weeks in July replacing shingles myself. Emma, 12 then, handed me nails and brought me lemonade, worry creasing her young forehead as I balanced precariously on the sloped surface. Mom, please be careful, she called up to me repeatedly. Always. Honey, I'd reply, wiping sweat from my eyes. Someone's got to keep this old place standing. That summer set the pattern for the years that followed. While Ryan and Kimberly posted Instagram photos from Santorini and the Maldives, while Jeremy built his life in Chicago, rarely visiting, I poured my savings and my sweat into keeping our family legacy intact. $300 for a new water heater, $400 for plumbing repairs, $800 for structural work on the deck, $950 for a professional to treat the termite damage I discovered in the crawl space. Weekend after weekend, I'd pack up the car with tools and supplies, Emma riding shotgun, and make the drive from Philadelphia to Cape May. Why doesn't Uncle Ryan help? Emma asked once as we drove, rain pattering against the windshield. She was 14 then, old enough to notice the imbalance. He's busy, I said simply, not wanting to burden her with adult resentments. But you're busy too. Mom, you grade papers until midnight sometimes. I reached over and squeezed her hand. Some things are worth the extra effort, sweetie. This house is part of who we are. Each time I raised the issue of formalizing the ownership, my mother deflected. There's no rush, Joanna, she'd say dismissively. We're family. We don't need everything in writing. But I knew better. I'd seen too many families torn apart over less. So I kept careful records, every receipt, every repair, every hour of labor documented in a thick binder that grew heavier with each passing season. And then there was the video. I found it by accident while clearing out the garage during my second summer of renovations. An old camcorder tucked away in a box of Dad's things. The battery was dead, but I charged it and discovered several videos still saved on its memory card. Most were what you'd expect: birthday parties, Christmas mornings, beach days from when we were kids. But the last video, dated just 3 months before his death, showed my father sitting alone on the porch swing. Testing, he said, his voice so familiar it made my heart ache. I'm not sure if this thing is still working, but I wanted to get some thoughts down. He looked tired in the video, already showing signs of the illness that would take him too soon. But his eyes were clear and determined. I've been thinking about this house, he continued, about what happens to it when I'm gone. Denise thinks we should leave it open, let the kids decide together. But I know my children, he smiled sadly. Ryan's too busy climbing the corporate ladder. Jeremy's always been a wanderer. But Joanna, his voice softened, she's the one who truly loves this place. She's the only one who gives a damn. He sighed heavily, looking out toward the ocean before turning back to the camera. So I'm saying it now, for the record. This house belongs to Joanna. She'll be the one to keep it alive. Make sure it's hers when I'm gone. The video ended there. I sat on the dusty garage floor, the camcorder in my lap, tears streaming down my face. I copied the file immediately, backed it up in multiple locations. Not because I planned to use it, but because it was the closest thing to a conversation with my father I would ever have again. When my mother visited that August, I tried once more to discuss the house. We should really settle the ownership issue. Mom, I said as we sat on the newly refinished deck drinking iced tea. Dad's will was never properly executed. She waved her hand dismissively. Why are you so fixated on paperwork, Joanna? This house belongs to all of us. But someone needs to be legally responsible, I persisted. I've put almost $40,000 into repairs. And we all appreciate your hobby, she said, her tone making it clear she considered my efforts little more than busy work. But there's no need to complicate things with legal nonsense. We're family. The word that was supposed to mean unconditional support, but too often became a shield for taking advantage. So I let it go again. I continued my weekend pilgrimages to Cape May. I refinished floors and repainted walls and replaced fixtures. I planted a garden that bloomed gloriously each spring. I made the house a home again, not just for me, but for all of us. For the family that rarely showed up, even Kimberly and Ryan enjoyed the fruits of my labor when they occasionally deigned to visit. The house looks cute, Kimberly had commented last summer, her tone suggesting surprise. Almost Insta-worthy with the right filter. I swallowed my resentment and thanked her, not mentioning the 3 weekends I'd spent stripping and repainting the entire exterior while she and Ryan were in Provence. And now, 5 years after my father's passing, after thousands of hours of work and thousands of dollars spent, my mother had decided that Kimberly, who had once referred to the house as quaint but dated, should be its new owner. As I lay in bed that night after the dinner announcement, listening to the familiar sound of waves crashing against the shore, I made a decision. Tomorrow, I would call my attorney. It was time to set things right, not out of vengeance, but out of respect for my father's wishes, for my own sacrifices, and for the truth that had been too long ignored. The beach house wasn't just a property to be handed off like a party favor. It was a legacy built on love and labor, and I would not let that legacy be erased. Morning light filtered through the curtains as I lay awake, listening to the sounds of the house stirring to life. The floorboards creaked above me. Kimberly's footsteps, no doubt, probably already measuring spaces in her mind for the changes she planned to make. My blood simmered with a quiet anger, but I remained still, gathering my thoughts and courage for what needed to be done. I reached for my phone and sent a text to Martin Goldstein, my attorney back in Philadelphia. Need to meet urgently. Property matter. Can you do tomorrow morning? His response came within minutes. 9 a.m. Bring all documentation. When I finally made my way downstairs, the kitchen was bustling. My mother stood at the stove flipping pancakes, a rare display of domesticity she reserved for my brother's visits. Kimberly sat at the island scrolling through her phone, while Ryan and Jeremy discussed football. Emma was nowhere to be seen. "Good morning, sleepyhead," my mother chirped, her voice unnaturally bright. "Coffee's fresh." I poured myself a cup, noticing how the conversation lulled when I entered the room. "Where's Emma?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. "She went for a walk on the beach," Ryan answered. "Said something about taking pictures for a school project." I nodded, grateful for my daughter's intuitive sense of when to make herself scarce. She'd always been perceptive that way, sensing the undercurrents of family dynamics even when they remained unspoken. "So," Kimberly said, setting down her phone with a deliberate tap, "I was thinking we could talk about some ideas I have for the house." "Nothing major, just some updates to bring it into this century." My mother beamed at her. "That sounds wonderful, dear. This place could use a modern touch." I sipped my coffee slowly, letting the bitter liquid burn a path down my throat. "What kinds of updates were you thinking?" I asked, my voice carefully neutral. Kimberly's eyes lit up, clearly prepared for this moment. "Well, first, I think we should remove all these dark wood cabinets. Something white and bright would open up the space tremendously. And that wall between the kitchen and living room has to go. Open concept is everything these days." The cabinets my father had built by hand. The wall that held the growth marks of 3 children, pencil lines dating back to 1978. "And honestly," Kimberly continued, warming to her subject, "most of this furniture needs to go. It's so heavy. I'm thinking coastal chic whites, light blues, maybe some rattan pieces. The furniture my father had collected piece by piece over decades. The oak dining table where we'd gathered for countless family meals. The weathered leather armchair where he'd read the newspaper every morning." "That sounds lovely," my mother said, serving pancakes onto plates. "What do you think, Joanna?" Kimberly has such a good eye for these things. All eyes turned to me. I set my coffee cup down carefully, fighting to keep my expression neutral. "I think," I said slowly, "that everyone should have a chance to say goodbye to the house as it is before any major changes are made." A subtle shift occurred in the room, a tightening of Kimberly's smile, a flicker of annoyance in my mother's eyes. "Goodbye?" Ryan laughed. "It's not going anywhere, Joe. It's just getting a facelift." I forced a smile. "Of course. I just mean that some of these things have sentimental value. Dad made those cabinets, you know." My mother sighed dramatically. "Your father has been gone for 5 years, Joanna. Life moves forward. We can't keep living in a museum." "Is that what you think I've been doing?" I asked quietly. "Maintaining a museum?" "Well, you've certainly been resistant to change," she replied, her tone suggesting she was being charitable in her assessment. I could feel the conversation slipping into familiar territory me cast as the difficult one, the sentimental one, the one unable to move forward. I'd played this role in the family dynamic for too long. Today I decided to change the script. "Actually," I said, standing up and taking my plate to the sink, "I need to head back to Philadelphia a bit early. Lesson plans to finish before school starts." "Already?" Jeremy looked surprised. "But it's Labor Day weekend. We always stay through Monday." "I know," I said, rinsing my plate methodically. "But duty calls. Emma and I will leave after lunch." "Well, that's disappointing," my mother said, though her tone suggested more irritation than disappointment. "We were going to have a proper family dinner tonight." "Like yesterday's?" The words slipped out before I could stop them, tinged with more bitterness than I'd intended. A heavy silence fell over the kitchen. Ryan cleared his throat uncomfortably. "What's that supposed to mean?" my mother asked, her voice taking on the dangerous edge I remembered from childhood confrontations. I turned to face her, suddenly weary of the pretense. "It means that yesterday's announcement came as quite a surprise, considering the amount of time and money I've invested in this house over the past 5 years. Kimberly shifted uncomfortably in her seat. My brothers suddenly found their pancakes fascinating. "We've been through this, Joanna," my mother said dismissively. "Everyone appreciates your efforts, but decisions about the family legacy need to be made with the bigger picture in mind." "And what exactly is that bigger picture, Mom?" I asked, keeping my voice level despite the anger rising in my chest. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're giving away something that was never legally yours to give." My mother's face flushed. "What are you talking about?" I dried my hands on a dish towel, taking my time. Dad's will was never properly executed. The deed to this house was never transferred after he died. Did you forget that detail when you were making your grand announcement? The kitchen went completely silent. Even the ever-present sound of the waves seemed to pause. "That's ridiculous," my mother finally said, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. "Howard assured me everything was in order." "Howard never filed the paperwork," I said simply. "I've confirmed it. The property remains in Dad's name, with me as the designated inheritor in his will." Ryan stood up, his lawyer instincts kicking in. "Joe, if there's been some kind of misunderstanding, we can sort it out. There's no need to get confrontational." "I'm not being confrontational," I said calmly. "I'm stating facts. Facts that should have been addressed years ago, but were conveniently ignored every time I brought them up." My mother's face hardened. "Are you threatening some kind of legal action, Joanna? Against your own family?" There it was again, family, the word wielded like a shield whenever accountability loomed. "I'm not threatening anything," I replied. "I'm simply letting you know that before any transfers happen, there are legal realities that need to be addressed." "So this is about money?" Kimberly interjected, her voice tight. "You want to be bought out?" I turned to her, really looking at her for perhaps the first time. Her perfect highlights, her manicured nails, her expensive yoga wear, all the trappings of the life she and Ryan had built, a life that apparently now required our family beach house as an accessory. "No, Kimberly," I said quietly. "This isn't about money. It's about recognition. It's about respect. It's about acknowledging who has actually cared for this place when everyone else was too busy." Emma appeared in the doorway then, her cheeks flushed from her beach walk, her eyes immediately sensing the tension in the room. "Everything okay?" she asked hesitantly. I turned to her with a smile that I hoped appeared more genuine than it felt. "Everything's fine, sweetie, but we need to head back to Philly a bit earlier than planned. Think you can pack up after breakfast?" She nodded, her eyes moving between the faces in the room, reading the situation with her usual perceptiveness. "Joanna," my mother said, her voice taking on the conciliatory tone she used when trying to smooth over disagreements. "Let's not part on bad terms. I'm sure we can work something out that feels fair to everyone." I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw something I hadn't allowed myself to see before. A woman clinging to control, desperate to maintain her position as the family's decision-maker, even as her justifications grew increasingly hollow. "I hope so, Mom," I said quietly. "I really do." 3 hours later, Emma and I were on the highway heading back to Philadelphia, the beach house receding in the rearview mirror. The safe in my home office held the documents that would determine what happened next. But for now, I felt something unexpected amid the hurt and anger. Relief. The truth, long buried under years of family mythology, had finally been spoken aloud. "Are you okay, Mom?" Emma asked, reaching over to touch my arm as I drove. I glanced at her, my beautiful, perceptive daughter, and managed a genuine smile. "I will be, honey. We both will be." Martin Goldstein's office smelled of leather and old books, a throwback to a different era of legal practice. At 65, with salt and pepper hair and reading glasses perched on the end of his nose, he looked every bit the veteran attorney. I'd known him for years. He'd handled my divorce from Emma's father when she was just a toddler, and had become something of a friend and mentor since then. "So," he said, carefully examining the documents I'd spread across his mahogany desk, Your father never formally transferred the property before his death. No, I confirmed. He always meant to put it in my name, he told me as much, but his illness progressed faster than any of us expected. Martin nodded, lifting the original deed to examine it more closely. And your mother never probated his will or initiated a proper transfer of assets? She always postponed it. Said there was no rush, that we were family and didn't need to be so formal about things. Couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. He set down the deed and picked up the thick folder of receipts and invoices. I'd brought evidence of every dollar I'd poured into the beach house over the past 5 years. Approximately $38,000, I said before he could ask. That doesn't count my labor or the smaller expenses I didn't bother to save receipts for. Martin whistled softly. That's significant, Joanna, especially on a teacher's salary. It was worth it, I said simply. That house means everything to me. He nodded thoughtfully, then reached for the final item. I'd brought a USB drive containing the video of my father. And you say he explicitly states his intention for you to inherit the house? Yes. It's not a formal will amendment, but it clearly shows his wishes. Martin plugged the drive into his computer and watched the video, his expression revealing nothing. When it ended, he removed his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. Well, he said finally, the legal situation is actually quite straightforward. Your father's will, while not ideally specific, does name you as the inheritor of his real property holdings. Since the deed was never transferred out of his name, the beach house remains part of his estate. As the named inheritor, you have a strong legal claim. Relief washed over me. So my mother can't just give it to Kimberly? Not legally, no. She has no authority to transfer property that isn't hers. He hesitated. However, family disputes are rarely just about what's legal. They're about relationships, history, emotions. I nodded, my throat suddenly tight. I know, but I can't just let them erase everything I've done. Everything my father wanted. Martin leaned back in his chair, studying me. What exactly do you want to happen here, Joanna? Do you want to sell the house? Keep it for yourself? Force some kind of shared ownership arrangement? It was the question I'd been asking myself all night. What did I want? I began, then paused to gather my thoughts. I want recognition for what I've done. I want respect for my father's wishes. And yes, I want the house not to sell it, but to preserve what it means to our family. What it was supposed to mean, Martin nodded. Then I suggest a two-pronged approach. First, I'll draft a formal letter asserting your legal claim to the property and requesting that any transfer plans be halted immediately. We'll send that to your mother and to her attorney, Howard. And the second prong? I asked. Try talking to your family once more calmly, with facts, not emotions. They might respond better when they understand the legal reality. He gave me a sympathetic smile. Sometimes people need to see the cliff edge before they stop walking toward it. I left Martin's office with a plan and a sense of purpose that had been missing for years. On the drive home, I called the one person in my family I thought might listen, my brother Jeremy. Unlike Ryan, who had always been my mother's golden child, Jeremy had sometimes shown glimmers of independent thought. He answered on the third ring. Joe, everything okay? You left in such a hurry yesterday? I need to talk to you, I said. Just you. Can you meet me in Cape May this weekend? There's something important you need to understand before things go any further with the house. A pause. This sounds serious. It is. Please, Jeremy. One weekend, another pause, longer this time. Okay, I'll fly in Friday night. But no drama, Joe. I can't handle family drama right now. No drama, I promised. Just truth. The week crawled by. I taught my 5th grade classes with as much enthusiasm as I could muster, but my mind constantly drifted to the beach house and the confrontation to come. Emma, perceptive as always, noticed my distraction. You're going to fight for it, aren't you? She asked Wednesday night as we washed dishes together. The house? I glanced at her, surprised by her directness. I'm going to stand up for what's right, I said carefully. The house legally belongs to me, Emma. Dad wanted me to have it. She nodded, drying a plate with methodical care. Good, you deserve it. You're the only one who ever cared about it anyway. Out of the mouths of babes. My 16-year-old daughter could see what my family either couldn't or wouldn't. Friday afternoon, I received a text from Kimberly that made my blood run cold. Just spoke with a contractor about removing the wall between the kitchen and living room. Excited to get started on updates next week? They weren't waiting. Despite my clear statement about the legal situation, They were pushing ahead with plans to transform the house. My house. I forwarded the text to Martin, who responded immediately. Letter goes out tomorrow morning by courier. Sit tight. When Jeremy arrived at the beach house Saturday morning, I was waiting on the porch swing, the same one where our father had recorded his video 5 years earlier. My brother looked tired, the lines around his eyes deeper than I remembered. This better be important, Joe, he said, setting his overnight bag down. I had to reschedule 2 client meetings to be here. It is, I assured him, patting the space beside me. Sit, please. He sank onto the swing with a sigh. For a moment, we just sat there, listening to the waves and the distant calls of seagulls. Remember how Dad used to take us crabbing off the pier? I asked softly. A smile tugged at Jeremy's lips. He was so patient. I must have dropped the net a dozen times, but he never got angry. He loved this place, I said. Not for its market value or its investment potential. He loved what it meant for our family. Jeremy nodded, his eyes scanning the horizon. So what's this about, Joe? You didn't ask me here for a nostalgia trip. I turned to face him directly. The house was never legally transferred after Dad died. Mom has no authority to give it to Kimberly or anyone else. It belongs to me, Jeremy. Dad's will left it to me. He stared at me, processing. That can't be right. Mom said everything was settled years ago. It wasn't. I have all the documentation. And more importantly, I have this. I handed him my tablet, cued to our father's video. I watched his face as he listened to our father's words. The shock, the recognition, and finally, something like shame crossing his features. When the video ended, he handed the tablet back to me, his hands slightly unsteady. Why didn't you show this to everyone? Would it have mattered? I asked quietly. Would Mom have listened? Would Ryan? Would Kimberly have cared about Dad's wishes if they didn't align with her plans? Jeremy was silent for a long moment. What are you going to do? I've already done it. My attorney sent formal notices this morning. The house is legally mine, Jeremy. I've spent 5 years and nearly $40,000 keeping it standing when no one else would lift a finger. I'm not giving it up. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so reminiscent of our father that it made my heart ache. There's going to be hell to pay. You know that, right? Mom will see this as a betrayal. The betrayal happened long before today, I said quietly. It happened every time my contributions were dismissed, every time Dad's wishes were ignored, every time this house was treated like a commodity instead of a legacy. By Sunday afternoon, my phone was exploding with notifications. The legal notices had been delivered, and the family volcano had erupted. The first call came from Ryan, his attorney voice in full effect. Joanna, what the hell are you doing? Mom is beside herself. I stood on the deck of the beach house, watching waves crash against the shore as I held the phone to my ear. I'm protecting what's legally mine, Ryan. What Dad wanted me to have. This is ridiculous, he snapped. We're family. We don't sue each other. I haven't sued anyone, I replied calmly. I've simply established legal facts before decisions are made based on incorrect assumptions. Do you have any idea how this makes you look? Grabbing for property like some kind of... Careful, I interrupted, my voice hardening. Think very carefully about what you're about to say to me. A tense silence followed. In the background, I could hear Kimberly's voice, high and agitated. Look, Ryan finally said, his tone shifting to what I recognized as his negotiation voice. I get that you've put work into the place. We can talk about compensation, but this aggressive legal approach is completely unnecessary. It became necessary the moment Mom decided to give away something that wasn't hers to give, I replied. And this isn't about compensation, Ryan. It's about recognition. It's about respect. Respect? He laughed bitterly. Is that what you call blindsiding your family with legal notices? I tried to talk about this for years, I reminded him. Every time I was dismissed. Every time I was told we're family, we don't need paperwork. Well, it turns out we do. The next call was from my mother, her voice brittle with anger. I never thought you would do something like this, Joanna. Never. Like what, Mom? Assert my legal rights? Honor Dad's wishes? Your father would be ashamed of you, turning against your family this way. The accusation hit like a physical blow, but I kept my voice steady. Dad made his wishes clear. He wanted me to have the house because I was the only one who truly cared about it. I have him on video saying exactly that. Video? Her voice wavered slightly. What video? He recorded a message before he died. He knew you wouldn't respect his wishes unless he was explicit. I paused, letting the implications sink in. He knew you, Mom. The silence that followed was heavy with decades of unspoken truths. This isn't over, she finally said, her voice cold. Howard says Howard has been negligent, I cut in. He failed to properly execute Dad's will, failed to transfer assets legally, and failed to advise you correctly. If I were you, I'd be questioning his competence, not my motives. She hung up without another word. Jeremy called next, his voice weary. Ryan and Mom are on the warpath. Kimberly's talking about suing for the money they spent on contractor consultations. I couldn't help but laugh at that. Contractor consultations? For a house they don't own? Against the nearly $40,000 I've spent actually maintaining the place? Good luck with that. What's your endgame here, Joe? He asked quietly. What happens after you win? It was a good question, one I'd been pondering myself. What did winning even look like in this scenario? I want the house recognized as mine, legally and within the family, I said simply. I want an acknowledgement of the work I've done and the commitment I've shown when everyone else was too busy. And then, I want us to be a family again. A real one, based on truth and mutual respect. Jeremy sighed. That's a tall order. I know, I admitted. But it's the only one worth fighting for. The legal notices had included a temporary injunction against any modifications to the property pending resolution of the ownership question. Kimberly's renovation plans were officially on hold, a fact that prompted a venomous text message that evening. Hope you're happy now. Turning against your family over some old house? So pathetic and desperate, I didn't respond. Some bridges were perhaps meant to burn. Monday morning, Labor Day, I received an unexpected call from Howard Bernstein, my mother's attorney. His voice was strained, professional courtesy barely masking his discomfort. Ms. Carter, I was hoping we might discuss this property matter before things escalate further. I'm listening, I said, sitting at the kitchen table in the beach house, a cup of coffee growing cold before me. Your mother is understandably upset by the aggressive approach you've taken. However, she's willing to discuss a compromise. What kind of compromise? He cleared his throat. She would consider a co-ownership arrangement. The house would be shared equally between you, Ryan, and Jeremy, with decisions made by majority vote. I closed my eyes, fighting back a wave of frustration. Even now, even with the legal reality laid bare, my mother was trying to dilute my claim. To erase my father's wishes. To deny me what I had earned through years of dedication. That's not a compromise, Howard. That's a dismissal of legal fact. The house is mine by right of inheritance. The deed and my father's will make that clear. Ms. Carter, Joanna, surely. You see how this approach is damaging your family. Relationships? What damaged those relationships was years of being taken for granted, I replied calmly. Years of my contributions being dismissed. Years of my father's wishes being ignored. Your mother only wants what's best for the whole family. No, I said quietly. She wants what she wants. She always has. There was a long pause. I'll convey your response to your mother. But I strongly urge you to reconsider. Family disputes like this can become ugly. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet kitchen, surrounded by the evidence of my years of care. The refinished cabinets my father had built. The new countertops I'd installed myself. The freshly painted walls in the soft blue that matched the ocean on clear days. This was my home. Not just legally, but spiritually. Every corner held a piece of my heart, a memory of my father, a testament to my commitment when everyone else had turned away. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. How's it going? Do we still have a beach house? I smiled despite everything. Yes, sweetie. We still have a beach house. Always will. Her response came quickly. Good. Nobody deserves it more than you, Mom. Out of the mouths of babes, indeed. The confrontation I'd been dreading came that evening. I was sitting on the deck, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold, when I heard cars pulling into the driveway. Multiple car doors slamming. Voices raised in argument even before they reached the house. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and went inside to meet the storm. They burst through the front door like an invading army, my mother in the lead, her face flushed with anger. Ryan and Kimberly close behind, matching expressions of righteous indignation. And Jeremy trailing reluctantly, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. How dare you? My mother's voice shook with fury. How dare you go behind my back this way? I stood my ground in the center of the living room, calm in the face of her rage. I didn't go behind anyone's back, Mom. I simply asserted legal reality. By ambushing us with lawyers? Ryan interjected. By threatening injunctions? By stopping unauthorized changes to property that legally belongs to me? I corrected. Changes that were planned without my knowledge or consent. It's a family house, my mother insisted. It belongs to all of us. No, I said quietly but firmly. It doesn't. It never did. Dad left it to me in his will. The deed was never transferred out of his name, with me as the inheritor. Those are legal facts, not opinions or feelings. Your father would never have. I held up my hand, stopping her. I have him on video explicitly stating that he wanted me to have the house. That I was, and I quote, the only one who gives a damn about it. Would you like to see that video, Mom? Should we watch it together? The color drained from her face. Beside her, Ryan shifted uncomfortably. You're tearing this family apart, Kimberly said, her voice dripping with manufactured emotion. Over a house? No, I replied, looking her directly in the eye. The family was torn apart long before today. It was torn apart by years of dismissal, years of taking me for granted, years of ignoring the truth in favor of what was convenient. Jeremy stepped forward then, surprising everyone. She's right, he said quietly. I saw the video. Dad was clear about what he wanted. And we all know Joe's the one who's kept this place standing when none of the rest of us bothered. Ryan turned to him, betrayal written across his face. Whose side are you on? I'm on the side of the truth, Jeremy replied, a strength in his voice I hadn't heard in years. Something that's been in short supply in this family. My mother sank onto the sofa, suddenly looking every one of her 65 years. I don't understand why you're doing this, Joanna. Why now? Why not 5 years ago when your father died? I tried, I said simply. I tried to talk about the ownership issue dozens of times. You always shut me down. You always said there was no rush, that we were family, that we didn't need paperwork. I took a deep breath. But what you really meant was that you wanted to keep control. You wanted to be the one who decided what happened to the house, regardless of what Dad wanted, regardless of who actually cared for it. A heavy silence fell over the room. Through the open windows, I could hear the waves crashing against the shore, the constant, comforting soundtrack of my childhood, of my father's life, of the legacy he had wanted to pass to me. So what happens now? Ryan finally asked, his voice subdued. You kick us all out? Ban us from the family home? I looked around at their faces, angry, hurt, confused, and felt a surprising wave of compassion. They were family after all. Flawed, frustrating, but family nonetheless. No, I said quietly. That's not what this is about. Then what is it about? My mother demanded, her voice still sharp despite her dejected posture on the sofa. If not to take the house for yourself, then what? I moved to the old oak coffee table, another piece my father had crafted, and sat on its edge, facing my family. It's about honoring Dad's wishes. It's about recognizing the truth of who has actually cared for this place. It's about respect. Respect works both ways, Ryan said, his lawyer voice softening slightly. Blindsiding us with legal notices doesn't exactly scream respect, Joe. You're right, I admitted. And I'm sorry for the way I did it. But after years of being dismissed, of having my concerns ignored, I didn't see another way to make you all listen. Kimberly crossed her arms, her face still rigid with anger. So what now? You've made your point. You've humiliated all of us. What do you want? I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw something I hadn't allowed myself to see before. Insecurity. Beneath the perfect hair and designer clothes, Kimberly was desperately seeking validation, acceptance, a place in the family narrative. I want us to start over, I said simply. With honesty this time. No more pretending. No more ignoring the uncomfortable truths. I reached into my bag and pulled out a thick folder, all my documentation, all the evidence of what the past 5 years had really looked like. This house, I continued, has never been just a building to me. It's Dad's legacy. It's our family history. It's where Emma learned to swim, where we caught fireflies on summer nights, where we've built memories that will outlast all of us. I opened the folder, spreading out receipts, invoices, before and after photos of renovations. I've put nearly $40,000 of my own money into this place. Weekends, holidays, summer breaks. While everyone else was building careers and traveling the world, I was here, replacing rotted floorboards and fixing leaky pipes. My mother's eyes widened as she scanned the documents. "I had no idea it was this much," she said quietly. "You never asked," I replied, without accusation. Just a statement of fact. Ryan picked up a stack of receipts, flipping through them with a furrowed brow. "Why didn't you say something? We could have helped with the costs." I did say something. Many times. "You were always too busy. The Morgan account, the trip to the Hamptons, the promotion in New York, there was always something more important." He had the grace to look ashamed. "I'm sorry, Joe, I didn't realize—" "That's the problem," I said gently. "None of you realized. Or maybe you didn't want to. It was easier to let me handle it all, to take advantage of my love for this place, and then to act like I'd done nothing when it came time to make decisions." Jeremy moved to sit beside me on the coffee table, a silent show of support that meant more than he could know. "Dad knew," I continued. "He saw who really cared about this house, who would protect it after he was gone." I pulled out my tablet and set it on the table. "He made this video 3 months before he died." No one spoke as I played the video. My father's voice filled the room, tired but determined, his wishes unmistakably clear. When it ended, the silence was profound. My mother was the first to break it, tears streaming down her face. "Why didn't you show us this before? Would it have made a difference?" I asked quietly. "Or would you have found a way to dismiss it? Just like you dismissed everything else I tried to tell you." She didn't answer. She didn't need to. We all knew the truth. Kimberly stood abruptly. "I think Ryan and I should go. This is clearly a family matter." "You are family, Kimberly," I said, surprising even myself with the sincerity in my voice. "Misguided plans for renovations aside, you're part of this family. And I want us all to find a way forward together." She looked at me with genuine confusion. "After everything that's happened? After what your mother tried to do?" "Yes," I said simply. "Because that's what Dad would have wanted. Not the house changing hands, not walls being knocked down, but us finding a way to be a real family, one built on truth and mutual respect." Ryan moved to stand beside his wife, placing a hand on her shoulder. "What exactly are you proposing, Joe?" I took a deep breath. This was the moment I'd been planning for, the resolution I'd spent sleepless nights contemplating. Legally, the house is mine. That's non-negotiable. The deed will be properly transferred into my name, as Dad intended. I looked around at their faces, making sure they understood the firmness of this point before continuing. "But this will always be a family home. You will always be welcome here for vacations, for holidays, for weekends at the beach. Not as owners, but as family. And if we want to make changes?" Kimberly asked, her voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. "Then we talk about it," I said. "We discuss it respectfully, considering the history and meaning of this place, not just its potential market value or Instagram appeal." My mother wiped her tears away, her composure returning. "And that's it? That's your grand solution?" "No," I said, meeting her gaze steadily. "There's one more thing. I want an acknowledgement from all of you of the truth. No more pretending. No more rewriting history to make yourselves comfortable. I want you to see what really happened here and to recognize it publicly." "Publicly?" Ryan asked, alarmed. "What does that mean?" "It means at the next family gathering. It means when friends or relatives ask about the house. It means no more stories about how the beach house has always been in good hands or how everyone contributed equally. The truth, Ryan. That's all I'm asking for." Jeremy nodded beside me. "It's fair. More than fair." My mother stood, smoothing her slacks with trembling hands. "I need time to think. This is a lot to process." "Take all the time you need," I said, rising as well. "The truth isn't going anywhere. Neither am I." They left one by one, my mother first, her shoulders stiff with pride even in defeat. Ryan and Kimberly next, subdued and thoughtful. Jeremy last, giving me a quick, fierce hug before following the others. I stood on the porch and watched their cars pull away, the setting sun casting long shadows across the lawn. The weight I'd carried for years felt suddenly lighter, the truth finally spoken aloud after so long in silence. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "How did it go? Are you okay?" I smiled as I typed my response. "Better than expected. I think we're going to be okay. All of us." That night, I sat alone on the porch swing, listening to the rhythm of the waves. The same sound my father had listened to. The same sound Emma would listen to for years to come. Some things remained constant, even as people and relationships changed. I ran my hand along the weathered wood of the swing, feeling the grain beneath my fingers. Dad had replaced the chains just months before his diagnosis, ensuring it would last for years to come. Always thinking ahead. Always caring for the details others overlooked. Like father, like daughter. The deed to the house would be officially transferred to my name next week. Martin had already started the paperwork. A legal formality that would simply confirm what had always been true. This place was mine, not because I had seized it, but because I had earned it through love and labor when no one else would. As the stars appeared one by one in the darkening sky, I made a silent promise to my father. I would be a worthy steward of his legacy. I would keep this place standing, keep it filled with laughter and love, keep it as a gathering place for family, a real family, built on truth and mutual respect. And someday, when the time was right, I would pass it on to Emma, who already understood what the others had taken so long to learn, that some things are worth fighting for. Not out of greed or possession, but out of love and respect for what they truly mean. In the quiet darkness, with only the waves as witness, I felt at peace for the first time in years. The battle had been painful but necessary. The truth had been hard but healing. And the house, this beautiful, weathered, memory-filled house, would remain what my father had always intended it to be. A home, not a possession. A legacy of love, not a commodity to be traded. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new conversations, perhaps even new conflicts. But tonight, under the stars my father and I had so often watched together, I allowed myself to simply be. To breathe. To feel the weight of recognition, of vindication, of truth finally spoken and acknowledged. The beach house was mine. It had always been mine in all the ways that truly mattered. 3 months passed. The leaves in Philadelphia turned golden and fell, and the first frost dusted my garden. The legal paperwork had been completed without further drama. The deed to the beach house officially transferred to my name, just as my father had intended. The silence from my family during those months was deafening, but not unexpected. Wounds take time to heal, especially those inflicted by truth. On a crisp November morning, I received an unexpected text from Jeremy. Having Thanksgiving at my place in Chicago this year. Would mean a lot if you and Emma could come. I stared at the message for a long time, emotions churning. Part of me wanted to decline, to protect myself from another potential family battlefield. But another part, the part that still believed in second chances, wanted to accept. What do you think? I asked Emma over dinner that night, showing her the text. She considered it thoughtfully, twirling pasta around her fork. I think we should go, she said finally. Running away doesn't solve anything. Besides, she added with a small smile, I kind of miss Uncle Jeremy. So we went. The flight to Chicago was turbulent, much like my emotions. I had no idea what to expect, who would be there, what would be said, whether old wounds would be reopened or new ones inflicted. Jeremy's apartment was warm and welcoming, the smell of roasting turkey filling the air as he greeted us with genuine hugs. To my surprise, everyone was there. My mother, subdued but polite, Ryan and Kimberly, noticeably less flashy than usual, and several cousins who had always remained neutral in family disputes. Thank you for coming, Jeremy whispered as he took our coats. It means more than you know. Dinner was a carefully choreographed dance of polite conversation and deliberate avoidance of sensitive topics. We discussed Emma's college applications, Ryan's new position at his firm, Jeremy's recent promotion. My mother complimented my haircut. Kimberly asked about my 5th grade class. It was civil, if not entirely comfortable. After dessert, when everyone had moved to the living room with coffee and tea, Jeremy clinked his spoon against his mug. I'd like to say something, he announced, his voice steady but nervous. The room fell silent, all eyes turning to him. This past year has been difficult for our family, he began. We've faced truths that were uncomfortable. We've had to reckon with patterns and behaviors that have hurt us all in different ways. My mother shifted uncomfortably on the sofa. Ryan stared into his coffee cup. But family isn't about being perfect, Jeremy continued. It's about being willing to acknowledge mistakes and try to do better. He turned to me, his eyes sincere. Joe has shown incredible patience and forgiveness, even when we didn't deserve it. even when we tried to take something that was rightfully hers. I felt tears pricking at my eyes, unexpected and unwelcome. Emma squeezed my hand. I want to publicly acknowledge something that should have been acknowledged long ago, Jeremy said, his voice stronger now. The beach house in Cape May rightfully belongs to Joanna, not just legally, but morally and emotionally. She's the one who saved it when the rest of us couldn't be bothered. She's the one who honored Dad's wishes when the rest of us were too busy with our own lives. The silence in the room was profound. I could feel my mother's eyes on me, but I didn't turn to meet them. And I'm grateful, Jeremy continued, that despite everything, she's still willing to share that space with us. Still willing to let it be a family home, even after how poorly we treated her. He raised his mug. To Joanna. To forgiveness. To doing better. One by one, they raised their mugs. Even my mother. Even Kimberly. A simple gesture of acknowledgement that meant more than they could possibly know. Later, as Emma chatted with cousins and the others busied themselves with cleanup, my mother found me alone on Jeremy's balcony, watching the Chicago skyline glitter against the night sky. It's beautiful, she said, coming to stand beside me. Though not as beautiful as the ocean view at Cape May. I nodded, uncertain what to say. We stood in silence for a long moment. I owe you an apology, she finally said, her voice soft but clear. A real one, not the kind I usually give. I turned to look at her, surprised by the vulnerability in her face. I was wrong, Joanna. About the house, about your contributions, about many things over the years. She gripped the balcony railing, her knuckles white. Your father always said you were the strong one. The one who saw things clearly. I resented that, how much he admired you, how much he trusted you. He loved you too, Mom, I said gently. I know, but he respected you. There's a difference, she sighed deeply. I've spent my life trying to control everything, everyone. It was wrong to try to give away the house that was never mine to give. Wrong to dismiss everything you've done to preserve it. I felt something tight in my chest begin to loosen. Thank you for saying that. I'm not asking for forgiveness, she said quickly. I just wanted you to know that I see it now. The truth, she hesitated. And I'm proud of you, Joanna. For standing up for yourself. For being stronger than I ever was. We stood together in silence after that, watching the city lights, the space between us still fragile, but beginning to heal. Christmas came, and with it, an invitation I never expected to receive. Ryan and Kimberly wanted to host the family at their home in New York. Emma is especially welcome, Kimberly added in her text. We miss her energy. It was a tentative olive branch, and I accepted it with equal caution. The gathering was smaller than Thanksgiving, just my immediate family, but somehow more significant. In the privacy of their home, without extended family as buffers, we would have to face each other more directly. Ryan greeted us with awkward enthusiasm, taking our coats and showing us around the apartment with its sweeping views of Central Park. Kimberly had prepared a beautiful meal, clearly putting effort into making us feel welcome. During dessert, Kimberly cleared her throat nervously. I have something for you, Joanna, she said, reaching under the table to retrieve a large, flat package wrapped in silver paper. It's not much, but I unwrapped it carefully to find a framed collection of photographs, old pictures of the beach house through the years. My father building the deck, me as a child flying a kite on the beach, Emma learning to swim in the ocean, recent shots of the renovations I'd completed, all beautifully arranged in a custom frame. I found them in family albums, Kimberly explained, her usual confidence replaced by genuine humility. I thought you should have them for the house, to show its history. It was perhaps the most thoughtful gift she had ever given, not because of its monetary value, but because of what it represented. Acknowledgement. Recognition of my connection to the house, of its significance beyond mere property value. Thank you, I said, truly touched. It's perfect. And we have an announcement, Ryan added, reaching for Kimberly's hand. We've put in an offer on a small cottage in Cape May about 10 minutes from the beach house. Not to compete, he added quickly, seeing my expression, but to be closer. To be part of the community that means so much to our family. I felt a smile spread across my face, genuine, unforced. That's wonderful news, and it was. Not because it erased the past or magically healed all wounds, but because it represented a step forward. A willingness to build something new from the ashes of what had been broken. That night, as Emma and I prepared for bed in Ryan and Kimberly's guest room, she looked at me thoughtfully. "They're really trying, aren't they?" "Yes," I agreed. "They are. Are you still angry with them?" I considered the question carefully. "Not angry exactly, cautious. Trust takes time to rebuild once it's been broken." She nodded wisely. "But it is possible to rebuild it?" I thought of the photo collection, of Jeremy's Thanksgiving toast, of my mother's unexpected vulnerability on the balcony. "Yes," I said softly. "I think it is." As winter deepened, something unexpected began to happen. My mother started calling regularly, not to criticize or control, but to genuinely check in. Ryan and Kimberly invited Emma and me for weekend outings when we were all in the city. Jeremy sent thoughtful texts and funny memes that made me laugh out loud. Slowly, tentatively, we were becoming a family again. Not the perfect, glossy version my mother had always tried to project, but something real, something honest. A family built on truth, even when that truth had been painful to acknowledge. And through it all, the beach house stood waiting on the shores of Cape May, a testament to resilience, to care, to the power of standing up for what's right even when it's difficult. Memorial Day weekend arrived with perfect weather-warm sunshine. Gentle breezes, the ocean a sparkling blue as far as the eye could see. Almost a year had passed since that fateful dinner when my mother had announced her intention to give the beach house to Kimberly. A year of confrontation, reconciliation, and slow rebuilding of trust. I stood on the porch of the beach house, watching cars pull into the driveway one by one. My mother, her silver hair gleaming in the sunlight. Ryan and Kimberly, who waved enthusiastically from their new electric SUV. Jeremy, who had flown in from Chicago the night before and stayed at a local bed and breakfast. All arriving for the first family gathering at the beach house since everything had changed. "Nervous?" Emma asked, coming to stand beside me. At 17, she seemed to grow more perceptive by the day. "A little," I admitted. "It's different now, hosting them here as the official owner." She bumped her shoulder against mine affectionately. "You've always been the real owner, Mom. Now they just finally see it too." They approached the house with noticeable hesitation, as if unsure of their welcome despite my explicit invitation. I stepped forward to greet them, determined to set the tone for the weekend. "Welcome," I said simply, opening my arms. "I'm so glad you could all make it." The tension visibly eased from their shoulders. One by one, they embraced me, my mother's hug lingering a moment longer than usual, her eyes misty as she pulled away. "The house looks beautiful, Joe," she said softly. "You've done wonders with it." "Thank you," I replied, genuinely touched by the compliment. "I've been working on some new projects I think you'll like." I gave them a tour, showing off the improvements I'd made since their last visit. The kitchen with its refinished cabinets and new countertops. The living room with freshly painted walls and restored hardwood floors. The deck rebuilt and expanded to provide more space for gathering. "I can't believe you did all this yourself," Kimberly said, her admiration seemingly genuine. She ran her hand along the kitchen counter. "It's gorgeous." "Not everything was by myself," I admitted. "I hired professionals for the electrical work and some of the plumbing. But the rest, yes, nights, weekends, summer breaks. It was worth every minute." Ryan shook his head, a mix of admiration and regret on his face. "I should have helped more." "We all should have. You're here now," I said simply. "That's what matters." After the tour, we gathered on the expanded deck for lunch, fresh seafood, crusty bread, local wine. The conversation flowed more easily than I had dared to hope, old tensions giving way to new understanding. "So," my mother said as we finished eating, "what are your plans for the house, Joanna? Now that it's officially yours?" There was no bitterness in her voice, only genuine curiosity. Still, I chose my words carefully. "I want it to remain a family gathering place," I said. "A place where we can all come together, where Emma can bring her own family someday." I glanced at my daughter, who smiled at the thought. "But I'm also considering opening it up occasionally to others who might benefit from it." "What do you mean?" Jeremy asked, intrigued. "I've been talking with some colleagues about creating a summer retreat for teachers," I explained. "A week or two each year where educators who can't afford beach vacations can come and recharge. Nothing fancy, just offering the space when we're not using it." "That's a wonderful idea," my mother said, surprising me with her enthusiasm. "Your father would have loved that. He would, wouldn't he?" I smiled at the thought. He always said this place was meant for making memories, not just for our family, but for anyone who needed the healing power of the ocean. Ryan leaned forward, his expression thoughtful. If you need any legal help setting that up, making sure you're protected liability-wise, I'd be happy to assist. Pro bono, of course. And I could help with marketing, Kimberly offered. Creating a website, getting the word out to teacher networks. I'd like that, I said, touched by their offers of support. Thank you. As afternoon turned to evening, we moved to the fire pit I'd built on the beach. The flames cast a warm glow on our faces as we roasted marshmallows and shared stories. Some old familiar tales from our childhood, others newer reflections that revealed how each of us had grown and changed over the past year. I've been thinking a lot about Dad lately, Jeremy said, poking at the fire with a stick. About what he would think of all this, of how we fell apart and then found our way back together. He'd be proud, my mother said softly. Not of how we behaved at first, but of where we've ended up. Of how we've learned to speak the truth to each other. Ryan nodded, his arm around Kimberly's shoulders. He always said a family is only as strong as its ability to face hard truths together. To Dad, I said, raising my glass. Who knew the truth before any of us were ready to see it? To Dad, they echoed. Glasses lifted to the star-filled sky. Later, after the others had gone to bed, I sat alone on the porch swing, listening to the waves and feeling my father's presence in every creak of the old boards beneath me. So much had changed in a year. The house was now legally mine, my position in the family acknowledged and respected in a way it never had been before. But more importantly, the truth had been spoken aloud and accepted, not just about property and legal rights, but about patterns of behavior that had damaged us all for too long. Emma joined me on the swing, wrapping a blanket around both our shoulders against the cool night air. Happy? She asked simply. I considered the question. Content, I decided. At peace. She nodded, understanding the distinction. Do you think it will last? This new version of our family? I hope so, I said honestly. It won't always be easy. Old habits die hard and we'll all make mistakes. But I think we've learned something important this year, that honesty, even when it's painful, is better than comfortable lies. You taught them that, she said, resting her head on my shoulder. By standing up for yourself. For us, I smiled, wrapping my arm around her. Maybe I did. The next morning, I woke early and slipped out to walk along the shore as the sun rose. The beach was empty, the sand cool beneath my bare feet, the world quiet except for the eternal rhythm of the waves. I thought about my father, about how he had loved this place, about how he had entrusted it to me because he knew I would love it too. I thought about the past year, the hurt, the anger, the confrontation, and finally, the healing. I thought about what it meant to fight for what matters, not out of greed or pride, but out of respect for truth and legacy. As I walked back toward the house, I saw them gathered on the deck, my mother sipping coffee, Ryan and Kimberly setting the table for breakfast, Jeremy and Emma deep in conversation. They waved when they spotted me, their smiles genuine, their welcome real. This was what my father had wanted all along. Not just for me to have the house, but for the house to have its true purpose, bringing family together, creating memories, building bonds that even the harshest truths couldn't permanently break. I climbed the steps to join them, feeling the solid wood beneath my feet, wood I had sanded and stained with my own hands, just as my father had done before me. The house stood strong around us, weathered but beautiful, a testament to care and commitment over time. Good morning, I said, accepting the cup of coffee Jeremy offered. Beautiful day, isn't it? Perfect, my mother agreed, her eyes meeting mine with newfound respect. Absolutely perfect. And in that moment, standing on the deck of the house that love built my father's love, my love, and now perhaps our renewed family's love, I knew we would be okay. Not perfect, not without challenges, but okay in all the ways that truly mattered. The beach house was mine. The truth had been acknowledged. And family, real family, built on honesty and mutual respect, had found its way home at last.